the best way to start is on time, right?
Go for it, baby.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for this next panel. I first want to thank our extraordinary conference organizers and the supporters for such a great experience. I'm Maggie Gaynor and co-founder of Zero Waste Humboldt. I've assembled talented consulting teams for government, nonprofit, and private sector clients over 20 or 40 years. And just to work on all the different ways that we can increase public adoption of zero waste habits. For the next half hour, our panel will discuss myths, some common misconceptions about public education and outreach. I'm pleased to introduce two experts who approach the challenges of changing behavior from very different perspectives. After introductions, I'll just give a brief kind of set the stage. Did I? There we go. Set the stage for our discussion, the context. So for starters, Rebecca Graham is a communications project manager with MIG in Berkeley and has 20 years of public relations and marketing experience with government, public health initiatives, nonprofits, community groups, and green products. Rebecca connects communities to the public services and agencies that seek to support them and provides comprehensive communications guidance for change makers across print, web, social media, and in-person outreach. Rebecca strives for inclusive communications at all levels of messaging and outreach. And then Natalie Lessa is a behavior change strategist with over 7 years as a waste consultant and is the co-owner of Re-Create. Natalie has worked with dozens of municipal agencies, sustainable corporations, and environmental organizations as a project manager with R3 Consulting Group and as an independent consultant. Natalie's focus is to make it easy and sustainable for businesses and residents to reduce waste, decrease recycling contamination, and meet legislative mandates with education and outreach and on-the-ground assistance. So can we go to my little stair steps? These are sort of a progression of 8 steps it takes for, and this is just one way to look at this challenge, to adopt a new habit. It can be any person, anywhere, in any given population, workplace, community. And whether you're opening up a restaurant and you want to get people to become loyal, constant customers, or you're trying to get people to switch from buying their milk in wax cartons and plastic jugs to a returnable, refillable milk bottle. Get people to get in the habit of using water bottle refill stations with their reusable bottles. This is one way to look at it, and there's so many different channels of communication, behavior change tools, and I tend to kind of skim this every single time I take on a new project. Each one, there's something important about it. I'd say number 7 is really critical, closer to the top. That's when they've gone from never even having heard of the possibility of or this change of habit to their first time trial. And that's when you want it to work well. If something about it fails, there's a likelihood they may never try it again. And so it's really important. So I'm going to let you guys take it away. Rebecca?
Thanks, Maggie. Hi, I'm Rebecca Graham. Maggie introduced me, so I won't go over it again, but I would like to tell you our first myth today, which is that mailers are useless. So if you're a waste management or recycling provider, you probably have access to resident mailing addresses. I'm here to tell you that is an invaluable tool if you use it correctly. So here's an example of a newsletter we create for Recycle Smart, where we use Contra Costa's single and multifamily mailing lists to reach residents. We reach them with engaging and aspirational design that supports residents' recycling behavior. These are quarterly mailers, and what we require for ourselves for each one is that they must educate, they must wow, and they must nudge their readers towards zero waste. When we've captured them with beautiful graphics, we help them take the next step. So you'll see we're pushing here compostable lunchware and reusable lunchware. Our client in this case knows that their audience is older, including retirees, and includes stay-at-home parents, both of whom are more likely to read their mail. So the newsletters have been so popular, we've actually created material-specific bonus mailers, and those provide clear, helpful guides that residents can post in their homes to easily improve their home sorting. Here's a tearaway panel for the recycling issue. And yes, those are custom graphics. We do have to draw those little various plastic icons. Here is a green cart guide with a handy guide to composting. What can go in your green cart? What doesn't belong in your green cart, including fruit stickers. So we also include regulation and environmental updates so that folks can connect their behaviors to the larger picture. And we include a local focus so that they know it's homegrown and really particularly relevant in their home. Here's Henry Walker from Moraga and his backyard compost bin. We also bring in kids. Here on the right, the debris detective is inviting kids to audit their home compost so that they can help prevent food waste. Finally, right there in the middle, we're nudging with Renew Your Shampoo. When we help folks, when we answer this reader question about what should I do with my shampoo bottles, we nudge them towards shampoo bars and toothpaste tabs. We hear from readers that they really love their newsletters and that they help with recycling and compost at home. Natalie, do you like mailers? What's your take?
Rebecca, I love your mailers. I think they're beautiful. I would also argue that sometimes mailers are useless, especially ones that are overly wordy, that don't pack that wow punch, that aren't inspiring people to even look at them. And I think in a lot of cases, we have to go above and beyond the mailer. But yours are beautiful, and thanks for sharing them.
Thanks. Well, I'll just go back as a reminder. Aim for the best. Know your audience and meet them with great aspirational work. And then we can bust this myth that mailers are useless. All right, another one is that repetition is nagging. Nobody wants to be nagged, of course. But have you ever tried to make a change in your habits? You need reminders. We're up against an onslaught. I've heard in various sessions all of the different ways that our messaging can be drowned out, right? Buy, buy, buy. Here's a sale. Oh, the holidays. Oh, you better buy early. Our messaging is a drop in the bucket. So we must repeat our messages and keep our tone hopeful and inviting so that we help folks remember how easy it is to reduce their waste. Here are 7 ways we've invited residents to learn more about SB 1383, California's mandatory composting law. You'll see the headlines are all different, the images are all different, but the summary is starting January 1st, 2022, you better be using that green card. Social media is also a great way to handle reminders. You can even schedule them in advance and just know that they'll be going out on a calendar. That way you don't have to think about it each time, but you know that your audience is being reminded. This is a social campaign based around 52 ways to love your water, protecting stormwater runoff in San Diego. And those are weekly actions that folks can take and then share again online. Just one more reminder that reminders can be fresh, reminders can be beautiful. Here are one of 1,000 ways we've reminded readers about empty, clean, and dry. We ran a poetry contest. We have a coffee cup here and a glass bottle reminding folks that empty, clean, and dry is the way to recycle. We also invited our readers to take on a new mantra. As long as you keep it fresh and positive, I'd say this myth is busted. Natalie, do you have another for us?
I have another myth that I would like to address, and that is that nobody wants you at their front door. Well, a year and a half ago, we saw in-person outreach come to a screeching halt. And for those of us that are used to spending the majority of our time in the field, we were left with coming up with new ways of providing outreach. We began to heavily rely on webinars for staff trainings, FaceTiming commercial properties to conduct distanced waste audits, and the long overdue increase in the widespread use of social media, videos, and online learning. For Re-Create, the consulting company that I work with, it meant waiting patiently with our municipal and private clients and watching the colored COVID tier system change to a place where we all felt comfortable doing in-person outreach again. And we wondered if we would ever get there, or if the new forms of outreach had replaced what we had traditionally known as being the most impactful form of educating people, and that is in real life. But 2 months ago, we conducted door-to-door outreach across 9 communities in San Bernardino County, and I'm really excited to share with you what we learned. We didn't really know what to expect from the community. We were really pleased with the high response rate. Just to provide some details, we went out Monday through Friday between the hours of 9 and 4. As you can see, we had our faces covered with a mask that adorned a large recycling logo, as did our shirts. And we positioned our postcard, which read recycling rules, towards the door, or the ring in those cases where a household had a ring, which was about 25% of the time. People would come to the door and you could hear them walking up saying, "There's recycling people here." So we felt like our branding really did work and helped us to increase the door answer rate. Over the course of 10 days, we visited 1,200 homes across the largest county in the country. And we're really pleased that we had a nearly 60% door answer rate from making just 2 attempts, which as compared to other studies is higher than we anticipated. Of those door answers, 95% of people responded yes to wanting to receive information, and we had 0 instances of COVID safety concerns, which we were really happy about. So what did we accomplish with door-to-door outreach? By meeting the audience where they are, we were able to answer questions in a really specific and tangible way. We had residents walk off and come back to the door with items that they wanted us to clarify as being trash or recycling. As you can see, someone brought a soy milk container to us and wanted us to help them out. So I always say we need to make our zero waste programs fun, easy for people to understand, and convenient. And it really doesn't get much more convenient than having a real human recyclopedia at your door. The final point I want to highlight about why door-to-door outreach is still so valuable is because it demonstrates to the community that zero waste is a priority. You know, if we're standing at the door talking to you about something versus a bill insert or a mailer, it's really saying that this is important. It also lets residents know that what they are hearing and learning is the same as what their neighbors are hearing and learning. So it gets everyone on the same page, which establishes a social norm. It really shows residents that, hey, this is important. This is something our community cares about. We're dedicated to achieving it, and we're here to support you in creating this change that's best for you and for the greater good. So I hope that the last year and a half hasn't deterred you from doing in-person outreach, and particularly with residential door-to-door knocking, people are still going to welcome you when you knock on their door for the most part. So I would consider this myth busted.
What about pilot programs? I don't know if they're worth it.
This is another common myth that pilot programs are just not worth the trouble. So let's break this down a little bit. So general public awareness and the success of outreach is notoriously challenging to tie to results, but that is exactly what you can do with a pilot program and exactly what we did in San Bernardino County. By conducting an initial waste characterization and then rolling out the program and following it up with a second characterization on a household by household basis, we were able to test how effective our outreach campaign was for actually changing behavior. And I know we're talking a lot about recycling and contamination because that was the point of this program, but what does that mean for zero waste? Just to back it up a little bit. When we can educate people on the reality of what's happening to their material and get rid of this idea of wish cycling, we can get people to start to think more and more about how their overall consumption should be shifted to support a more zero waste lifestyle. And if they don't realize the reality that just throwing something into the recycling bin doesn't mean it's actually getting diverted, they can't continue to feel, like that happy, fuzzy feeling about reducing their impact on the landfill. That's what we need to change the tide to get people to be more zero wasters. So Here we're doing a waste characterization. We're reinforcing it with social media and letting the community know what's happening on the ground in their own community. So we'll talk a little bit about budget. If you're interested in what the budget for this looks like, I'm happy to share that with you, but just know they're probably not as expensive as what you might think, and they are completely worth it. So why conduct a pilot program? Well, they can serve many purposes. Here are a few. In the examples shown, you can see that we were testing multiple mediums. So we were testing in-person, print, and online learning. Specifically, we wanted to know what was more effective, a printed oops tag coupled with in-person outreach. And then we wanted to identify whether or not there was any increased behavior change in households that also completed an online training. You can also test messaging. And I want to highlight a key pillar of community-based social marketing, and that is the importance of developing campaigns where the individual can see or imagine themselves doing the behavior. CBSM says that the behavior should match the individual's identity and values, whether that's personal, societal, financial impact, environmental. And by conducting a pilot program, we were able to identify the unique values of these different communities by asking questions at the door and engaging residents in the actual development of the campaign. For example, we learned that the primary topic of interest for residents was the safety of local recycling workers, and that their primary environmental concern was actually illegal dumping and litter. And this insight we will use moving forward for the development of the community-wide campaign message. In closing, for this myth, let's address the two most common misconceptions about pilot programs, and that is that they take too long and they cost too much money. Maybe it looks like that in the short term, but in the long run, no, because you are making your programs more efficient now in order to save yourself time and money in the long run. There is no greater waste of money or time than pumping out ineffective education and outreach. And what is the point of education and outreach in the context of zero waste? It's to create a change in behavior. Yes, there are other reasons for doing outreach, like informing people, raising awareness, but ultimately we are hoping that people live a more zero waste lifestyle. And by conducting a pilot program, you can identify the unique needs of the community. You can identify values, test messaging, test what mediums your audience pays attention to, and ultimately roll out a community-wide program that will save you time and money in the long run, and most importantly, be effective in getting you to your goals. So I would say 100% pilot programs are worth it.
We have a few questions. You guys ready? Let's go right into them.
Sure.
Daniela Ochoa, what do you use to schedule social media? Who wants to take that one?
I can take that one. I would say whatever tool works best for you. Do you mean like tactically? Hey Orca, later, Hootsuite. I think whatever interface works for you and your budget. We've really found that it's all about the work process rather than the tool. But I do think you should schedule it. I'd absolutely support that.
We're running a compost pilot program in Ferndale, Missouri. So necessary to collect data and keep the program launch small to educate. Really? So this, I don't know if you have any comments you want to.
Well, something, sorry, Natalie, I'd just like to add on to what you said about pilot programs, which is when you're looking at a small geographic area, especially, you can use digital marketing to do a really cost-effective and really quick turnaround to test your messaging. So you can do A/B testing, you can do ABC testing, you can be A followed by B, like which one really shows up in the carts, really shows up in behavior. You can sometimes get feedback in weeks for then it's very cost effective. So that's a recommendation for me. Did you have something else, Natalie?
Oh, I was just going to agree that about the importance of collecting the data, because really that's how we can demonstrate the change, and that's helpful for the future of the program and securing funding, and really for the longevity of what you're rolling out. Because if we can demonstrate that what we've done made an impact, then you have all the more reason to continue it. So that data collection is crucial, and it's again one of those things that people think they don't always have the time or money to do. but in the long run, it really is going to be way more beneficial than if you didn't take the time in the beginning to gather that. Thanks, Claire.
How do you determine the content for each newsletter?
Well, it's seasonal. So we think about what will people be thinking about, where will we be, what will be the problem items. We've definitely done newsletters around this time of year about flocking, about not using flocking on your holiday greenery so that those will be compostable. So that's where we start, is the seasonality, you know, what's going on, whether it's food or decorations, you know, an anti-gift guide for holidays. And then we look at customer feedback. What questions have we gotten recently? What innovations are there? Luckily, you know, we have a nice large format, so we get to cover a lot of things, but we want, in order for it to be educational and wowing, you know, it needs to be fresh. So if there are legislative updates, if there are product updates or service offerings, you know, if there is a zero waste resource newly available, we'll want to put a little profile about that. I saw Devin Bradley earlier today talking in Zero Waste Youth, and we had to highlight his program and their program because we were so wowed by what they were doing in the community. So we really try and just kind of like a newspaper, what's topical, what's really going to matter to our audience right now.
And so I want to just reinforce some of your points and maybe provoke some more thoughts. We have one more question too. What you just described for me is what I've always called Inreach, going to where people are, what is of interest to them, where do they get their information from, what's topical and timely and of value to that target population. It seems like every single one of these, that the four that you've busted the myth, it can go either way. It's the more you know about your population, your target population, again, whether it's a workplace or it's a school or it's a large urban community, the more you know about them, the more successful the different tools that you're using, different communication channels, the more successful it will be in getting to them. And so you can adapt your mailer to really be what, you know, resonates with them. You can go door knocking, kind of grassroots organizing, go to the front door when they're most likely, you know, ahead of time, you've done some demographic research, they're most likely to be home, those kinds of things. 100 years ago, not really, it was in the 1980s that the book came out that had a lot of impact, the mega trends. And one of them always stuck with me. One of those mega trends way into the future is that people are craving a balance of high tech with high touch. And so in your communications and your different tools that you use, you can do all social media, but then when somebody shows up at the door or you get a mailer, it just reinforces, you want a little bit of everything. Again, the repetition of same message, but from very different sources is a good thing. Let me throw another question at you. Well, let's see, do you find real life images versus animation are more effective? For example, a photo versus a drawing.
I guess I'll take that one. You know, I showed you Henry Walker, and we like that picture because it is a real person from that community. Here, I'll just pop him up again. However, you know, images can be inclusive and images can be exclusive. So we want also to make sure that our images are reflecting who's actually in these communities. And so in some cases we default to animation just to not have that sort of like door closing effect from having images that only show middle-aged white man, for instance. Where if our audience has a large portion of Latino residents, we want to make sure that our images are reflecting that audience. So kind of just like Maggie was saying, right? You know your audience and make sure that whatever imagery you present really is inviting.
Another question, how and where do you collect your feedback from?
Right now we're doing reader surveys. That's where we get for this particular project. Other times we do intercept research, you know, just depending on the audience, we intercept those people on the street checking in, which can be a wonderful feedback loop also. How other have we gotten our feedback? Oh, and then we close the loop, right, with the numbers. What's happening in the carts, what's happening at the curb.
That really shows behavior change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie, you have anything to add about where you get your data, your feedback from about how you're doing?
Yeah, since the nature of so much of what we do is the actual in-person work and the technical assistance, we have been back and forth wondering what's better, having a tablet with us when we're doing that work and updating the, a Google spreadsheet or a Google form is something that we usually use when we're actually out in the field with that feedback in real time, or keeping it old school and just using pen and paper. And we've wanted to become more high tech and have that be the way that we default into doing outreach and getting our feedback. But we really do find that it actually is quicker when we're in the field and more efficient for us to use pen and paper and then go back and transcribe our notes into different apps that we've used and different software programs to track the feedback. So not to oversimplify it, but that's what we have found to actually be the most useful.
It seems like quantitative data, feedback that comes in that form is always complemented. Your understanding's even better when it's complemented with qualitative. Yeah, yeah. I think that's all of our questions. Any others? Any last, well, let's see.
I would like us to talk a little bit about that. We're planning a webinar on this subject for early in 2022. We haven't picked dates yet, but these three women and perhaps others will be spending more than a half hour on the Inreach outreach question.
There's so many arms and legs to this picture of how to be effective in changing people's behavior that I'm in. That'll be fun to do and have more time. I mean, one of the campaigns that I've replicated many times that it seems like the public enjoys is when this is just a quick example, very different people. It could be a Democrat and a Republican, or people from very different parts of the community come together and say, yeah, we don't agree on anything, and except we both think this is really important. It's like it's effective. You kind of round up support from everybody. Here's another question. Do you try and find real life influencers? So this is addressing to target, and then they can spread the message to their followers. Yeah, in the old days, we used to call them community influentials, and significant others are not just who your partners are, but they're people who influence your thinking. Today, they're called influencers. You guys want to, this will be our last question to address. You want to?
I wanted to piggyback on something you were just saying, Maggie, actually about bringing people together and how you can have such diverse ways of thinking and then have people at the table. And that's so important. And also, I just wanted to highlight that the way that they get there can look very different, and the value that it is that a group is connected to. It's okay if it's different. The example I used, we were in 9 different cities, some of them incredibly rural, red, conservative, others progressive, some mountain, some desert, some urban. And, we're talking about creating a change in behavior, and just so understanding the values of those different areas, they can look different. And yes, using influencers and people and groups even that are highly recognized and respected in the community is a great way to get there. So thank you.
Here are ways to reach the three of us. Feel comfortable to send us any other thoughts, or you want to bounce ideas around. So much appreciate this opportunity. it's been a joy for me to connect with these two experts in the field and always learn new things. So Portia, any last things that we need to tell them right now, or we're ready to wrap up?
Well, let me spotlight myself here for a minute. Or I would like to encourage you all to join us in the main stage. We're going to break out into groups and have an opportunity for a little more dialogue. We really worked hard to make this conference a interactive conference, but we're finding that half-hour sessions does not really allow for sufficient interaction. So please join us. I think you'll find it's well worth your while. I'll be manning. I will be staffing the Zero Waste USA booth, but a lot of the leaders of the conference will be in the other rooms, as well as myself, since I'm one of those leaders. All right. So I'm going to close out it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you,
And,
Portia, and thank you,
forward
Maggie.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so
Look
much.
forward to having an announcement in regards to a 2-hour webinar on this topic in early 2022, not January, but early.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take
Exciting.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.